Hey you guys, Shawn Tubbs here. Welcome to my studio. I've got a low gain overdrive pedal to show you today. This one's by a company called Seafoam pedals, and it's the Lowtide Overdrive. There she is there. This pedal was designed by a guy named Dave Denton. He's from Mobile, Alabama, and his original purpose for this pedal was really just for himself. He just kind of had a sound in his head that he wanted to be able to create, but as these things go, people get interested when they hear them, and you know, one thing led to another, and now he's building them and selling them. This is a unique pedal, at least it is to me. When I first played it, it was kind of hard to peg it. I couldn't kind of go, well, it's a tube screamer or it's a rat, you know. And I found out this is a transistor-based overdrive, which is unique, at least for me. But it also allows you to add diode clipping, which is really, really cool. So it's a low gain overdrive, but it can definitely go from low gain to pretty wild amounts of gain, and you'll hear that when I demo it. So let's just look at the controls really quick. Top left is volume, and it does exactly what it says. Now, if you do want to use it to really bump the input of your amp, there's plenty of volume there to do that. Right next to that in the middle is the bass control. Next to that on the right side is the treble control. Now I will say that these are passive controls. So essentially when these guys are rolled all the way to the right, that's how the box sounds. And when you roll them to the left, you're essentially cutting either bass or treble. Now the bass frequency I believe was sitting at 500 hertz and down is what you're cutting. The treble frequency is 1K and up that you're cutting. And I found it to be a really usable circuit, and you'll hear it in the demo. It's really great. Now the drive control is interesting because it's a transistor gain bias drive. So what happens is when you turn this thing, it's going to crackle a little bit. And for me, it's like, who cares? Essentially, this would normally be kind of a trim pot that would be on the inside of a box that you set and forget, but in this case, this is Dave's circuit. This is a sound he wanted. Now, it never makes any racket while you're playing, so unless you're going to be tweaking that thing actually while you're playing, you're never going to hear it. But as I had mentioned, the drive control will go from pretty mild all the way to what I would consider wild, and you'll hear that in the demo as well. As you roll it up, it really gets thicker sounding before it creates drive. As you get past about 12 o'clock, that's when you start getting more overdrive. And then when you get into that 3 o'clock and up range, that's when it starts getting pretty wild, almost into fuzz territory. Yeah, lots to work with there. The last control is on the bottom right. It's called the focus. That is what's bringing in the diode clipping. So when you roll the focus all the way to the left, you're going to get asymmetrical diode clipping. If it's in the center, it's neutral, so you're only hearing those transistors. When you move it to the right, you're going to get diode clipping again, but it's going to be a symmetrical clipping. And Dave's idea behind this was to go this route as opposed to just having a three-way switch that would just have harsh kind of differences between each one. This one kind of gave you a softening effect between the two types of clipping, from neutral to asymmetrical or neutral to symmetrical. And it is subtle, but it works really well. And you know, with any type of, when you're changing clipping, sometimes you have to turn volume up and down, and you know, that's kind of par for the course. But yeah, this is a unique sounding box. Input and outputs on the front of the box, which I like. I'm finding I like that more and more now as pedal boards get more and more compact. 9-volt DC jack there, and it's a soft switch, which I always appreciate switching in, and it is true bypass. So yeah, it's a really good sounding low gain overdrive. So without further ado, let's check this guy out. It's the Lowtide Overdrive by Seafoam pedals. Okay, you guys, let's check out this Lowtide Overdrive by Seafoam pedals. I'm going to use my Sir Telecaster into the Friedman Dirty Shirley 40 watt. I've got this dialed pretty clean so you guys can really hear what the pedal's doing. So here's the clean sound. And here is the Lowtide. So that was the first sound I actually dialed up on it, and it's kind of what inspired the tune I wrote at the top. Is I just thought, wow, it's got this kind of like Voxy top end, or maybe a Supro. It was a thing I couldn't really peg this pedal as being anything. I couldn't say, well, it just sounds like a Tube Screamer, or maybe it sounds like a Klon, or maybe a Blues Breaker kind of thing. Or and I really thought that was interesting. So let's just get straight into it. Let's look at the EQ circuit first. This is a passive EQ, so that being said, if you roll the knobs all the way to the right, that's the actual sound of the pedal. Now, if I understand correctly, the bass is 500 hertz and down that it cuts, and the treble is 1K and up that it cuts. So if we start with both of these knobs to the right, this is the actual sound of the pedal. Which is a pretty huge sounding. But let me go ahead and let's just roll the bass off first. Now I'll do the same thing with the treble. So pretty big range there that's very usable, very musical. Now the one thing you can do with this EQ, if you're wanting to hear, say, more mids, you can basically roll down the bass and maybe a little bit of treble, or you can roll them both down at the same time. So if I want a little more mids, I'll roll the bass down. And if I want a little more mids than that, I'll actually just take some treble out. That tone right there would sit in a track really cool. So that's kind of how that works. It's what I like about this EQ is it's not rocket science to get it to work. It's actually really well thought out, and it's voiced really nice. Okay, so that's the EQ. Let's look at the drive. Now, the drive is a transistor gain bias. So essentially what's going to happen is when we turn this, it's going to crackle a little bit. And it's really just part of that circuit. Normally that's something you would see on a trim pot inside the pedal. But the way Dave designed it is that is the drive circuit. So it didn't bother me. I mean, it crackles a little bit, but it doesn't do it while you're playing. And of course, unless you're moving that thing with your pinky toe or something while you're playing, you're never going to hear it. So with that being said, let's just listen to the drive really quick. Now, the way it works is it's a pretty subtle thing up till about 12 o'clock. So what you're not going to hear is you're not going to hear drive building up. What you're going to hear is it's going to get a little bit thicker, and then around 12 o'clock you'll start hearing more drive, and then 12 and above is when the drive starts taking off. So let's just start with the drive off, and it's boring, but I'm just going to play a chord and roll it up. So that's no drive. It gets a little thicker, but it's not a ton more drive. So I'm going to stop at about right there, because what happens is this thing really goes from like this transparent low gain overdrive, basically from that to just wild. And I know Dave initially said that he really designed it to be kind of a low gain transparent drive box, but boy, it can definitely go wild. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn the volume down so I don't blow up my DAWs, because as you do turn up the gain, you get quite a bit more volume. So I'm just going to go ahead and roll the gain the rest of the way up. Into almost like a fuzz territory, just by rolling the thing all the way up, and it really gets out of control when you do back position stuff. That's a really fun setting. I dig it. That may not be for everybody, but I really loved it because it's just wild and sounds really cool. So that's kind of our explanation on the drive. Now the last thing I'll go over with you guys, excuse me, is the focus. Now the focus is basically introducing diode clipping. Everything you've heard up until now with this knob essentially in the neutral setting is just the transistor. It's a transistor-based overdrive pedal. When you roll the knob either way, the focus knob, you're introducing diode clipping. So if you roll it all the way to the left, you're going to get asymmetrical clipping, diode clipping. If you roll it all the way to the right, you're going to get symmetrical diode clipping. And you know, from what I understand from Dave, he could have just done a three-way switch: middle's neutral, left is asymmetrical, right is symmetrical. But he wanted kind of a more softening effect between the different types of clipping. And it is subtle, but it's definitely something that's very usable. So right now in the center, what we're hearing is we're just hearing essentially the transistors. Now if you roll to the left, you're going to get asymmetrical clipping, which is going to add, excuse me, a little bit of kind of low mid presence. It is subtle. So I'll just go ahead and roll from center all the way to asymmetrical, and then we'll roll to symmetrical and let you guys hear it. Like right there, I instantly hear a little bit more low mid presence. There's a little more kind of bark there. That has less mids, maybe a little more kind of spread out. I don't want to say scooped mids, but it is less mids. So you can hear there, it's a little fatter in the low. Now it's a little more throaty. And I thought it was just a really cool idea. It was one of the things, another thing that kind of made this pedal more unique was that it was kind of a softening thing. It wasn't just a harsh one way or the other kind of deal. And I found that I liked this setting kind of right here. Just kind of felt the best for me. And obviously it's to each his own. But I really felt like that was... It's kind of what inspired the opening song I did. That was kind of the first sound I pulled up. So that's the explanation and the demo of the Lowtide Overdrive by Seafoam. If you've got any questions, obviously reach out to those guys. Dave's a really good dude, and he can answer in way more detail than I ever could the questions you guys might have. And as always, thanks for tuning into my videos. I've got some more coming, so please, if you like these videos, hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you next time, guys. Thanks.